Okay, welcome everybody to another March Monuments series race. This is race number 2, and today it's the final part of the Tour of Flanders. So the riders are going to be doing the last 87 kilometers. If you look at the bottom of the screen at the profile, you can see it's pretty awesome in terms of the ups and downs. So this is going to be a very challenging course. I'm really looking forward to this one. I'm not riding it. I have to be part of the group in order to cover it with the spectate mode, and I'll be covering the whole event. I won't miss a minute. When I do have to go away, I'll leave the feed going and probably concentrate on one of the groups. But I'll cover the whole event. I'm expecting it to be about 3 hours, a little bit shorter for the races, 3 hours for the tail enders. And I'll get everybody coming in to the finish line, so I'm not going to miss anyone. Last week, the first race, we had some serious race tactics going on, particularly from OTR, who are the main sponsors of this event, and James Ogilvie, who seems to be the group leader. So we'll see what happens this week, whether they take command again. We've currently got 35 riders online, so that's growing nicely. I'm just going to switch the view around so that we can see them go off the line. There we go. And I'll get a nice view at the start. And I have to jump on the bike every 30 minutes, but I've set alarms this week again, and hopefully we won't have anything like we had last night in the sportive, where I didn't have my alarm clock with me. So alarms are set to tell me every 25 minutes to jump on the bike, so we should have uninterrupted coverage. And with 3 minutes to go to the start, hope a few more join in. But good afternoon, James. Yes, I'm here, and I am honestly really looking forward to this one. Because of the profile, it's going to be difficult from the off. I mean, it climbs almost immediately out of the start gate, and then it's up and down with some serious hills, particularly in the early part of the race as well. So that's gonna split the group slightly, I think. I mean, the sportive was pan flat last night, and gave a completely different feel to what this is going to be. I mean, the sportive wasn't officially a race, but you try telling the riders that were taking part that they were really pacey, average pace being about the 3 watt kilo mark. So I expect this to be that little bit more sharp, and we'll see how it goes. Now, I'll be taking breaks, but as I say, I'll be leaving the feed going, concentrate on whoever's at the front or middle or the back of the race. Just leave it going while I go away and take a break, comfort breaks, etc. But there will be uninterrupted coverage. And a reminder that tomorrow we have the third sportive of the weekend, and that'll kick off at, I think it's 1400 hours GMT. So, and as James says, best of luck, everybody. We'll see how Mr. Turcotte gets on this week. He was the winner last week. For many people, surprise winner. Not for himself, obviously, but he rode a good race last week, a very confident, very good race. Went clear with quite a few kilometres to go and never looked like being caught. So it's going to be interesting to see what we get. And I'll jump on the bike very shortly so that I can start pedalling so we can get off from the start, and then I'll start my race coverage. So sit back, enjoy the race. If you're taking part, then certainly enjoy it, but if you're one of the viewers, consider hitting the like button, even though we haven't started yet, and hit that subscribe bell so that we can grow the channel. Okay, I'm going to jump on the bike now, so the next sound you will hear, yeah, here we go. Here we go, there we go. And I only have to pedal until I see my cadence on screen. And then once there we go, there's my cadence showing. So that's it for me. I can sit back now for the 25 minutes until my alarm goes off, and we can catch up with Mr. Chang, who has jumped off the front. And what we'll do is we'll swing the camera around to see the chasing pack. There we go. All nicely off the line. There's a few right at the back. We'll catch up with them in a minute. But we'll just stay with the front group just while it forms up and gets going. 38 riders, so that's nice. We might have a few late joiners, but they won't officially be part of the race if they do late join. Now, special call out, you can see the Team 3R jersey just going to the front here. And I'm very, very excited about this, because this is one of my colleagues from over on Team 3R, Stephen Brearley. And he's an ardent Swifter. So to see him, there he is, to see him actually here on the RGT platform is fantastic, but to see him racing on the RGT platform is even more fantastic. And he's a good rider. So expect Steve to be in the mix with this race. And I, for one, am really looking forward to a good effort from him. So we'll see what happens. And more importantly, I'm looking forward to chatting with him afterwards and finding out what he thinks of RGT and the racing. It's probably not his first time, but this will certainly be his longest race on RGT. 87 kilometers today, so that's a bit shorter than last week, but you can see from the profile, this is going to sting. This is going to be a really hard working effort. Okay, for newcomers to the stream, I'm going to explain what happens with the view. Obviously, you can see I can pan the cameras around and follow the group. I can switch views to see what's going on behind them. So I can switch views with my mouse and panning the cameras around. But in order to work through the rider list, I can't select riders from the list. I have to go through one at a time. So what happens is it starts to go through the riders. I was already fairly close to the back when I switched to MTO. Now, MTO rode yesterday and had a pretty good ride. He finished the whole of the 99 kilometers. So this lad has got 99 kilometers in his legs before he even starts today. And I, for one, hope he gets back up to the group and can get in amongst them, because he certainly deserves it. And then behind we've got Brunner and Gill. And then Andredis, rider number 35. He's another 300 meters behind. And Gutierrez, rider number 36. And then last ride on the road at the moment is Nistoroy. Hope I pronounced that correctly. Because obviously I'm last rider, but I'm not officially riding. So I stay still until time to move in the 25-minute slot, so that I don't get kicked out of the race. You have to be in the race in order to cover it, in order to do spectate mode. So once again, using the page up and page down keys, you can see I can follow the riders, and following from the back is pretty easy. But once you get, here we go, there's MTO. Once you get to the group, so we've got 30 riders, you can see, in the group. And what using the page up button does then is start to flick through them one at a time. But because they're changing position, you're not going to actually flick on every rider. But we've got 30 in this group, and I'd expect the group to sort of like more or less stay together until we get to that first big red spike, and then I think we'll see a serious reckoning, the group forming into smaller groups. I mean, the key here for the early part of the ride for these races is to try and stay with the front. And I'm just going to zoom out a little so that we can actually get a look at the group on the road. There you go. And you can see we've got who have we got on the front? There we go. We've got Brooke Wavel on the front. And he's leading out the team. At the moment, steady away, 4 kilos on the front, which is about a little bit less than what we had yesterday in the sportive, but I think the sportive riders yesterday were going a bit daft with the wattage in the early part of the race. So this is steady away. This is steady, what I would call race pace. It'll settle down once they've got 5 or 6 kilometres in the legs. You'll find that the riders will be coming through and off and doing the turns on the front. I mean, they're starting to do that now, to be fair, but you generally at the start of a race get the stronger riders near the front. Doesn't mean they're going to be the stronger riders towards the end of the race, as we found out last week. And what I'm doing at this early point is I'm looking to see which riders are riding smart. And by that I mean not doing all the work on the front and sitting in when they can to save some watts. And we've got some very clever riders in this race, so I'd expect to see that happening. Jan van Beers, he's one to watch. As I say, my colleague Steve Brearley, I think he's going to be in the mix at the front for quite a while. Brooke Wavel is always one to keep an eye on. Fiemt, if I can pronounce that right, he's another rider to keep an eye on. So early doors yet, but and Shapers, again, teammate of who else is in the? I called him out earlier. Anyway, there's 2 RR riders up near the front. I've spotted at least 4 OTR riders. So, but my feeling is that this week, because of the profile, I mean, last week lent itself to team tactics because the hills didn't start until fairly late on in the ride, and even then the hills weren't really of significance enough to in the early part of the race to sort it out. This race profile, you can see, is going to easily sort out the contenders. And so I'm not so sure that race tactics are going to play a part from the beginning like it did last week. And in fact, that's exactly what's happening. We're not seeing that. Where the race tactics will probably come into play is when we get the group thinned down. And again, that happened in last Saturday's race. The group thinned down, and then the OTR boys just completely bossed the front group that formed. Will they do the same this week? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to spin round and see what's happening behind them, because you can see from the overhead shot this group are going to stay together for a little while. I would have thought at least until they get on the downhill and approaching that first really steep climb. But let's see how far behind from this group the following riders are. So I'm going to work my way to the back of this group. That's what I'm doing now. I'm working my way one at a time through the group, getting to the last rider in it. Takes a while because I've got to go one rider at a time. There we go, I'm getting there. There we go. So this fellow, Mr. Gross, he's 180 meters off the group. So little chance of pulling this gap back before they hit that big climb. And if he's a climber, he can close the gap. If he's one of the rollers or bigger riders, chances are he won't be able to close the gap. So he's probably going to have to sit up and wait for somebody behind. And you can see a rider on the road behind him, and that's Galizzi, rider number 30. And he's 90 meters behind Gross. So those two may well come together, may well ride together. It's a personal choice when you're racing, whether you hook up with riders around you, whether you sit up, wait for them, or whether you put in a charge to collect them and ride with them, or whether to ride on your own for a little while until there's a likelihood of somebody collecting you. Because behind we have Xavier, but he's a further 130 meters behind Galizzi. So, the question here is, do you ease up slightly to allow him to come back to you? Do you push on? And here you can see 3 riders that have come together. Now, what these 3 riders should do, and we'll check whether they're going to be doing this, they should ride together for a little while, try and form a small group, and try and catch the guy in front of them who's only 95 meters in front. And that will then make 4. And obviously 4 riders will ride better as a group than 3, and so on and so forth. So trying to stay together as a small group makes perfect sense in the early part of a race. The difficulty is the terrain, as you can see, because that's not all the riders are going to be capable of putting in the same efforts on the same hills. So we'll see what happens. So there you are, and then you've got these 2 riders at the back, 35 and 36, Andrej and Nistorov, or Nistoroy. I don't know how to pronounce that, but these are the last 2 riders on the road. Well, no, they're not. Nistoroy is riding on his own, so he's the last rider on the ride. And it looks like he's just happy at the moment just to turn over the pedals. He's 870 meters behind the 2 riders in front, so could be a lonely ride for him for quite a while. But the hills can change everything, and we saw this in some of the hillier sections of last week's ride, where placings were constantly changing once we got into the hills, whereas on the flatter rolling sections we weren't seeing an awful lot of change in riders on the road. I do think these riders will join the rider in front, and then they should ride together. So Galizzi is just 370 meters in front of them, and then in front of him you've got Gross a further 200 meters ahead. And then you're starting to see the group. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pan the camera around so that you can actually see the riders at the back of the group rejoining. Okay, there you can see. Now, riders at the back that are being tailed off have obviously got to not only rejoin the group, but I explained this in more detail in last night's sportive commentary. What you've got to do when you rejoin the group after being tailed off at the back, if you've closed a 10 or 20 metre gap in particular, you don't just join the back of the group. You need to work your way through the group, not off the front, because that's just wasting energy. But you need to rejoin the group somewhere near the front, so that you can sit back, relax a little bit, enjoy the drafting, and just recover. Because if you're constantly yo-yoing off the back, if you're 20 meters away from the back, you put in a big effort to get back on, but then as you reach the back, you ease up and then you're off again for another 10 meters. You're going to be completely burning matches that you don't need to be, because the energy savings are going to be towards the middle and front of the pack, not at the back. And that's where you need to ride if you're one of these riders that is struggling to hold on to the group. You need to try and get as close to the front end as you can without actually pushing your head into the wind. Because if you're like a rider like me, who, to be honest, if I joined a group like this, I wouldn't want to be pushing my nose into the wind, because I know I'd pay for it later in the ride. I'm just not strong enough to be one of the leaders leading out the race. And it's good to know your own strengths and weaknesses. My strength would come when we get to the climbs. My weaknesses is after the climbs I get dropped, because I just don't have anything left. I work so hard. And I'm such a lightweight rider, I can't keep it going. But you can see here, nice pace. They're on the 4% downhill slope. And they're approaching the first significant climb. It's not particularly steep climb, but it's the first, what I would call, hill of the route. So this will be interesting to see whether anybody wants to try and push on up this first big hill, or whether they wait for the spike that you can see on the profile, the red spike. And personally, that's what I would be doing. I would be bringing the group along, and then if I'm going to attack, I would attack on the spike. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit and see what's happening at the front of the race. There we go. So pressing the end key on the keyboard takes you to the very first rider, who in this instance was Dyer. He doesn't stay the first rider, obviously, but it takes you to the first rider, and so you can follow what's happening at the front of the race. You can see James Ogilvie in third place. Brooke Wavel has taken over the lead, and he's one to watch. He's always one to watch. He's a very strong rider. Had a good ride last week. I think he burnt too many matches in the early part of the race last week and suffered for it towards the end, but he put in a very strong performance. And Turcotte, you can see in fifth place. He's racing smart once again. If you didn't know that he won last week's race, you'd think, well, he's not, he's not coming to the front. He's not really showing his cards, and that's the correct tactics to use. He just stays under the radar, but you watch towards the end. You got Shapers, who just did a brief turn on the front. Ruben Klein, he's now doing his turn on the front, pushing the pace up to 5 watt kilos and above. So he's testing them as we get into the base of the climb. You can see the slope increasing, 1.7 at the moment. It's going to go up. I think this slope it's not really a big hill. It's a gradual upslope for a kilometre or so. 2.3 now, look. So it's getting slightly steeper, but it never really gets steep. Not like the one they've got coming up next, which I think goes up to about 8 or 9%. So the group are just happy to try and stay together at the moment. No real team tactics here. But what will happen is, as we get to on the downhill, I think you'll see the teams forming up. I think you'll see RR Racing. I've noticed another one. So you've got at least 3 from RR. You've got at least 4 from OTR, and I think you'll see those riders forming up on the downhill just prior to hitting the steep climb, and then maybe that's where the breaks will happen. You can see OTR already are starting to amass at the front of the race, so they're showing the strength in depth. They've got some really good riders. I mean, Fiempt is a cracking rider, very strong. And James Ogilvie is no slouch. Bellio, he's a strong rider, OTR. Who else we got? I'm calling them out as I see them, folks, but obviously I'm concentrating on the front end of the ride. You see, James is already a little bit off the front, so we'll just go with James. He's got a 20-meter gap. Now, he's not trying to break away here because he realizes it's not going to happen. They're not going to let him go. Not at this point. But he's putting in a 5.6 watt kilo, 5.9 watt kilo effort here. So it's a serious effort. And they did this last week. And what they did was James wanted to see who the stronger riders are in the group. So he did an effort very similar to this. So similar tactics again this week. He's going to go off the front. And this won't be the first time or the last time he does this. He's jumping off the front, testing the legs behind him, seeing what a gap he can go. He knows this is not going to stick. This is purely and simply to see, okay, who's got the legs to follow? Who's going to be making up the group as we get up and past the next climb? Because that's going to be key. Whoever gets up the next climb together will probably stay together for a little while into the ride. So this is the sorting, but you can see already he had a 40-meter gap, and already you've got at least 11 riders, here we go, pulling him back. They're not going to let him go. I mean, he eased up slightly, but the point of that from James, it wasn't silly tactics, it was very, very smart tactics, because he wants to find out who are the contenders, who are the riders that are going to make the effort to stay in the early part. I mean, I do like the OTR e-racing kit. Look, the green and white and black kit looks absolutely stunning. Not as stunning as the 3R kit that's just in view now. I mean, that's the best kit out there by a long way. And that's my mate, Steve Brearley. So, yeah, showing off the colours. But yeah, there's some good kit on RGT. And the OTR kit looks really nice. I like it. It's easy to spot the riders. That green stripe just makes it so easy to spot the riders, which is good because not all of them have got OTR in their, let's go back to the front, in their names. So I don't know who all the OTR riders are. Maybe they've got some that I'm not aware of as well in this group. That's one thing I would ask for, chaps. If you can do that, put OTR after your name if you're racing in this series, and then we can identify you much easier. And the same with other teams. Ask your riders to put the name of your team in brackets or just OTR or RR after your name, and then I can identify in commentary, I can identify the different team members, and it's going to make the racing commentary much more exciting, because if I know somebody's playing a part as part of a break or whatever, which team they belong to, I can do better commentary, explain what's going on to you. Now, as I say, this is the downhill. This is quite a steep downhill. We're at 4% at the moment, but it gets even steeper as they go into the blue part of the downhill part of the profile. 4.3, look. So this is going to see the group. I'm going to zoom out so that you can see. This is going to keep the group together. They more or less come back. You know, there'll have been a few dropped off the back, and we'll check on them shortly. What I want to do is stay with this group and look at them coming into the climb. In fact, no, we won't. I am going to drop back just to see who got dropped from this group behind them. So Chang, you can see there's 24 in the front group. Keep an eye on that number. 24 in the front group going on the downhill. There's my alarm to get back on the bike. And then these are the riders that got dropped. And I'm just quickly going through them. There we go. Okay, it's time for me to jump on the bike. So I'll put you back in commentary with the front group and just jump on the bike. What I have to do now is just very quickly check on myself. So all I have to wait for is my cadence to show up on screen. Once that does, there we go. There's my cadence. I can jump off again. That's enough to keep me in the game. Back to the start. Front, should I say, not start, front. And who's leading the way out? James Ogilvie. Pollack. So this is the transition into the really steep uphill. 6%. So this is going to bite the leg. 6.6. And it gets steeper. 7.2 you can see. So the gradient is climbing here. And this is going to sort them out. Look at all the red numbers now. The riders that want to be in this group are really making the effort. And I think you're going to see a few. This climb, it's not really that long, but it's long enough to sort out a split in the group. We're currently at 9%, and the group are still together, but you're going to see split. And in fact, you are doing. If you, I'll pan around for you. And if you look, you can see quite clearly gaps appearing at the back. Now, will they come back on the downhill before we start to get into the rolling section here, just after the climb? I don't think so. I think the guys that are off the back will remain off the back, because we're at 10.8% at the moment, and this is going to split the group. I'm glad to see my my Team 3R colleague Steve is hanging on at the front. Let's get back to the front and have a look. So there he is, third wheel. Oh, I've just noticed Decker's here. Whoa, he's a strong rider as well. I know Decker from Swift, so if it's the same lad, and I think it is, German, he's a very strong rider, so I'd expect him to be there at the end. Now, can Shepherd bring you can see he's with a couple of his teammates. So can he bring his teammates back? He's a strong rider. Let's just pan the camera around and see visually how far away they are. So if I... No, I can't see. No, let's zoom out a little bit and pan the camera. No, they're getting distance here. They're about 60 meters away from the swinging around that way. Look, you can't even see the group in front of them now on the road. So they're getting distance here, 100 meters. Let's get back to the front and see what's happening at the front. So you've got a small breakaway of 1, 2, 3, 4 riders Turcotte, Brearley, Decker and Lyons. Now 3 of those names I expected to be in the mix at the front. I don't think the 3 of them are going to stay away. I just don't see that happening. It's too early. But the fact that they've made the break and the riders behind are going to have to chase is no bad thing at all. That's good team tactics. Yeah, you can see the small group behind. So what we'll do is we'll work our way. Let me zoom in a bit. There we go. Let's zoom back in. And let's find out what's happening behind them. Here we go. So Shapers has got at least two of his teammates from RR with him. I don't know what the RR stands for. If somebody would like to message or leave a comment in the chat, apologies for that, but I just don't know what it means. So you've got these 5 riders, ably led by Shapers, trying to bring them back. And then you've got a further 2 members of his team. So they've got numbers in depth of RR. Then Brook Ravel is bringing up the next small group. So we've already seen, and that is a surprise to me, to see Feet and James, in fact, already distanced. Okay. Oops, a daisy. Let's see if we can get a view down the road. There we go. We can get a view down the road. So there's nobody actually in sight to catch. How far behind? 170 odd meters behind the next group in front. Now that's a distance that's easily closable at this point in the race. Easily being a relative term, but it is closable. They can close that gap if they work well together, but it's going to take an awful lot of effort because these are the riders that they're chasing. You've got Ruben Climb in the middle of the 2 groups. He will join the 2 riders in front, I've no doubt, because he's putting in more kilos at the moment. So he's going to join them. 3 riders in front, shall I say. There we go, 3 riders in front. He's going to join these 3, so that'll be a small group of 4. And then you've got this is the front group. So once again, the 4 that were away have been joined by the rest of the leading pack. And how many have we got now in this? We've got 9. So we've got 9 riders making up the front selection with a 200-meter gap. But that's not going to stick. I think you're going to see maybe an odd rider from this pack get dropped, and you're going to see an odd rider from the chasing groups 200 meters behind rejoining. So the 9 at the front, that's about a good size group. 9, 10, 11, 12 is what we're going to see, I think, going into the mid part of the race now. Because anybody more than 200 meters off the back has to join. Let's just work our way backwards again. Like these riders here really need to be working to get onto this group, and there's currently 200 meters behind. So these riders need to be putting in an effort to close the gap to the front group if they want to rejoin. And they need to be doing it before we get to this really, really steep downhill, because it transitions, as you can see, into a pretty steep climb, longer climb, and they may well not be able to close the distance. And then behind them, you've got this small group, and they are all going to come back together. Now, a group of, how many will we have? We've got 3 in the front and you've got 4 here. So a group of 7 are going to be able to work much better together and realistically can close up the gap to the front group. What I'm a bit concerned about is these guys, James, Fiemt and Jones. They're now a long way off the front. Let's calculate the 280. Yeah, I feel these guys are too far off the front to pull it back. Having said that, I'm not going to count them out because I don't know about Jones, but I do know certainly that Ogilvy and Fiemt are very strong riders and capable of putting in 5 kilo efforts to, like he's doing, you can see, to get back. So these 3 may rejoin. I'll keep an eye on them. Ellis, I think he rode yesterday. Strong rider. Joined by Bellio now from OTR. So they'd do well to ride together. Who else is with him? You've got Ellis, you've got Bellio, you've got Simmons and Cox. They need to ride together and they need to ride smart. Come on, get on his wheel, Cox. He needs to close the gaps up and get on the wheels, and they need to ride together smartly. Yeah, good. It's closed up. Then Chang, who, if you might remember, was the first rider up the road. He's putting in a good effort, but he's well on his own now. He's 780 metres behind the group in front. So he's going to have a lonely ride for a good while. And whether he joins anybody else, we'll have to wait and see. Bermudez. Again, he's 160 metres behind Chang and 230 metres in front of the next rider on the road. So he's probably riding on his own for a while. Vullier. He doesn't have to be on his own for too long. He's got riders in front and behind him, but it's whether they're going to be matching or near to the pace he wants to ride at. And that's the decision that you have to try and make when you're on the road. You have to make a decision, do I need to keep the pace I'm doing, or do I need to increase or decrease to let somebody join me? Doran. And we're getting towards the tail end of the ride now. It's nice to see these 4 have created a nice group. It makes no surprise to me that MTO is struggling today. He did an excellent ride yesterday, and you can see from his comments his legs were shattered yesterday. He worked really hard in the early part of the ride, so nobody can forgive him for joining a small group and taking it a bit easier today. And Gutierrez is still on the really steep section of the climb. You can see 11.4% it went up to. So that's horrendously steep. Well, 12%. There we go. I don't think it gets much steeper than that, but 12, you're going to feel it. Keep it going, sir. Well done. Andrade on the slope. And Nistroy is just approaching the steeper section. And there I am at the back. Okay, let's get back up the front. It's always easier transition from myself at the back to the front of the race just by hitting the end key to bring us back. And let's check and see. We've still got 9 up the front. Now the gap was about 200 meters and it's now 160 meters. So the chasing pack and I'm going to work my way through so that we can have a look at them. Let's see first of all whether we can see them on the road. So if I swing round, we can't see them in the distance in this shot. Sometimes you can on the long straight bits you can see them in the distance, but we can't do so. So they're still out of sight of this front group, and so let's work his way back from this group, who I feel are going to stay together for a little while. Let's work his way through them. There's Turcotte at the back. And this is the chasing pack, but they've closed the gap nicely, and in fact are still doing so. They brought it down from 200 meters to 100 meters now, and closing. So these guys are working hard. I mean, you've got some good riders in here, Brookwavel and Frey. You know, Plager's no slouch. Neither is Dyer. So you've got some good riders here making the bridge back across. 66 meters. They're closing fast. They are closing fast. They're going to rejoin that front group. And the front group weren't hanging around. Just to go back to them, yes, they've slowed up slightly, but you can actually see on the road now. We couldn't see when I did that a moment ago, well, about a minute ago, you couldn't actually see the second group on the road. You can clearly see them doing the catch here now. And this is the important transition part. As they catch, they need to come up to the front. Yep. Well, S. Frey's overdone it, because I wouldn't have done that. Oh, and so has Brookwavel, and so has Dyer. They've gone straight through. That's wasting energy. But yeah, you get the idea. They've got to sort of like, you know, make sure they do the transition from catching to joining the group. Well done. Really well done. So just to how many have we got now in this? Let's just work his way back through them. How many have we got? We've got 14 riders now. So we had 9, so we've had another 5 join this front group. And they're on this really, really steep downhill coming up. So they're going to fairly whiz away from anybody that's behind. And we're going to have a look and see who's behind now. So you've got Lyons at the back and Dyer at the back there. And then these guys, 480 meters behind. Now, I don't recognize the name Kapua, so let me just... Has he... Yeah, he's been riding from the start. It's strange I haven't spotted him before. You can see just behind them, so I'm going to zoom in a bit and swivel around. You see just behind them, you've got another 3 riders joining them. So that's nice to see another small group. Now, can these riders close that 680 meters to the group in front? Because this group includes James, who have gone straight past the 2 that they caught, actually. So my guess is that these 2 on the road are not going to be able to stay with the pace of the... let's just switch around and watch the group in front ride away from them, as you can see. So James and his comrades are riding away from these 2. Reuben Klein is putting in a bit of an effort, but I can say with all certainty he's not going to close that gap. He's going to try, though. I mean, full marks to the guy for trying this, but I don't think he's going to close it. Kapua obviously is not. In fact, he's stopped pedaling. So has he given up the ghost? I'm not going to stay with him. I'm going to go to the guy in front, because this is the interesting one. No, the gap's opening up again. He closed it for a short while, but you can clearly see the climbing now. If you watch the figures just above him, 180, 190, the gap's going out very quickly because they're on such the steep downhill. He may be able to close it. If he's a good descender, he may be able to close the gap. but it's a tough ask. I want to go back to the front and see whether this group are managing to stay together on this steep downhill. Let's see if we can swivel the camera around, get a better view. Overhead's probably going to be the best view. Whoa. Yeah, there we go. I mean, this is a great ride by the front riders, just working so well together. But I'm very impressed with the way it's all come back together. I'm really pleased to see that the contenders, in my opinion, and I will actually get off the fence later in the ride and tell you who I think is going to win this. I'm not going to just do that just yet because it's too far to go. But after we've reached the halfway point, I'll give you my pick for the winner. But it is nice to see the main contenders pushing things out at the front. Decker's just looking very, very strong. But obviously, same as there was last week, there's some riders in this group that I just don't know and I don't know of. A few names that S wins. I don't know. I don't know anything about him. Krajowski. I don't know anything about him. He looks to be riding well. So, yeah, you know, there's what I call diamonds in the rough. You've got riders that are staying under the radar who, you know, could well end up doing a Turcotte, as we had last week, where you just think, you know, you think you've picked the winners and completely blew the race apart in the final stages. But this is a chance for another sort out. There's a nice hill coming up now, just on the transition to it. So it's going to start biting, 2% at the moment. Now this is going to hurt, and this may well cause another split in the pack. I wouldn't be surprised. It's saying 5% on the thing, but so obviously not as steep as the 12% they went up last time. But 5% is enough to sort them out. And obviously Brookvarvel on the front. And we're on the 5% section now, so 5.5%. 5.9. So it's climbing steadily. And I think it does get a little bit steeper. Let's see if I can 7%. Let's see if I can find a better view, because this view is being obscured by the trees. So maybe this view from overhead will give us a better view of them going up the climb. If I zoom out a little bit, then maybe we can see more of the group and see who's behind them. I'll zoom back in a minute, folks. I just want to see if we can see anybody on the road behind them. Well, as you can see, so there's nobody really at this moment in time being dropped off this group, and all 14 of them are together. So are they going to stay together? We're on the 8% section, which I think is about as steep as it gets. I say that and then it jumps up to 8.6. That's typical commentator's curse. 9.2. Okay, because I haven't had a chance, obviously, to ride this course, I'm only guessing from the profile at the percentages. I can get a reasonable guess, but you saw there, I thought 8% was the max, and it went up to 9.2, albeit only briefly, but you still notice it when the gradient changes. You still notice the difference between an 8 and a 9.2. Now this is surprising me seeing Brook Wavel once again at the back. But I don't see him being dropped at this point in the race. I think you'll see him rejoin. I'm going to work my way through as well. I mean, Dyer will definitely rejoin the group. And there's my second alarm. So I'm going to have to leave this group just for a moment while I jump back on my bike. Just turn the pedals over, make sure there's my power. Come on, cadence. I always wait for my cadence just to make doubly sure. There we go. There's my cadence going. And back to the race. Here we go. And it's almost chocolate time. Keep my energy levels up. 50 minutes in. And what are we? 32 kilometers gone. So let's just zoom out a little bit. Steve Brearley, as you can see, is pushing off the front. He's looking super strong today. Wouldn't it be fantastic if he could take the win? You know, coming over from that other place and showing you how it's done. But I think Turcotte's going to have something to say about that. Last week's winner, and what a fantastic ride he did last week. I was so impressed because he did his teamwork. He worked with the team. He was one of the riders that helped to break up and break down the group, and also there were 3 riders against one other rider, non-OTR team member, and the 3 of them worked him over. I mean, he finished second in the end. I can't remember his name, but he finished second, and Turcotte did a good deal of that work as well before finally deciding to make the break on his own. So he's a team player, but he also made a solo break, which was just outstanding at the end of the ride. So don't think he won't be there at the end, because I know for a fact he will. He's got something to prove. It wasn't just a one-off. And another rider who you're definitely going to see at the end is Decker. There's no way that they're going to shed him in the early part of the race. They'd like to, because he's got a pretty strong finish on him. So there he is, putting in a bit of an effort just to get near the front. Okay, let's zoom out and check on what's happening a bit further behind, because we've now got 8 making up the front, and even those 8 are. It's very difficult to find a view. There we go. We've got a nice view there. Whoops, having said that, so you can see that 7 of the 8 are trying to break away, and Krajewski is hanging on for dear life at the back. He'll make the bridge and he'll get back. So these will probably stay together, but I'd like to see what's happening behind them. So I'm going to try and flick and see. Now these riders are a further 450 meters behind. So once again, we've had a bit of a breakup of the group. Let's zoom in and find out who we've got here. So you've got Frey, Dyer, Plager and Pollack. And Brooke Ravel's in here, which is a bit of a surprise to me. Now they're going to come back. They're not going to. I think at this point and on the downhill, 400 meters is nothing. I think they'll come back to the other group and make up as 14, 15 riders again. 14 riders again. So, and then behind this group. I'm really quite surprised by this, that Fiempt has been dropped and doesn't appear to be going that well. So there's obviously a reason behind it, and I don't know that reason, because he's a much stronger rider than this ride suggests. The ride we're currently watching suggests. So there must be an issue somewhere. And you've got James and Jones. Summers and Cox. Being joined by Ellis and Bellio. And there's Mr. Chang. Bermudas. Willier on the climb. And then this is more or less the last group on the road. You've got a couple of riders after this group, but this is the last small group on the road, sensibly riding together. With Capuo, Xavier catching him, Gutierrez. And these riders are about 5-6 kilometres away from the front end of the race. So they're going to, I think the idea here is, let's get back to the front of the race. The idea of the riders right at the back is purely and simply to finish. I mean, just finishing a race of this calibre. Now we're on a super steep downhill. And have we got a breakaway happening here? We got one. We were 7. How many are we here now? We got 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So we got 5 of the 7 have now split again. You can just see at the top of the hill the riders coming around the corner. So there's 2 riders behind these 5. And they're 100 meters behind, which is nothing. And in fact, closing the gap because of the downhill. So I expect them to come back together. It's like watching a boxing match where you've got punch and counter punch. There's just the slugging. Look, the 2 riders have come back, and I expected them to. So well done. Good riding. So once again, we got 7. Is it 7? Yeah, 7 in the front group, and then we've got a rider. Let's just work his way through this group and have a look. So Lyons is the last man on the road here of this group, and then you've got Wins, and he's 240 meters off the group, but this group are closing in on him very, very quickly. So once again, you could see the main 14 riders all come back together, and that wouldn't surprise me at all, because this is a strong chasing group working well together. So yeah, I think you may well see these riders joining forces. Look, they've caught up with the who's the rider in front? Brook Wavel in front, and then you've got Wins a further 250 meters in front, so they'll catch up with him, and then the 6 or 7 of them should be able to chase down 7 of them should be able to chase down the leading pack. Exciting stuff. Look at that, 14.2%. I mean, that's just insane. Oh, 19.7. Oh my God. And look at it, it actually shows the gradient. 25. Jeez, I didn't know there was a 25 on this course. Thinking, heck. That's a wall. That's not a climb, that's a wall. Excuse me. Yeah, that's pretty impressive climb. Is there anybody else coming up it? 25. Yeah, Jones is just coming. Oh, look at it. I mean, let's just pan around. In fact, you lose the top of the houses just from the top, don't you? That's an incredible climb. Anybody else? Yeah, here we go. Just look at the steepness of this. I mean, this is just insane. And it climbs from 14 to 25%. And you can, I mean, there was a comment in RGT Cycling Users that you didn't really see the gradient changes in the software in RGT. Well, that's bollocks. Excuse my French, but that's bollocks. I mean, look at this. You can actually get a good idea of just how steep this is. I mean, it looks like he's riding up a wall. That's just, I've lost him now, but that's just, there we go. That's just insane. You know, especially if you turn it side on, look. Side on view like that. 25%. That's just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Okay, let's get back to the front, find out what's happening. There's my colleague Steve. So what we got 7, and Wins has closed it up to 50 meters, so he's going to rejoin them, so that's going to make 8. And then the question is, was that Lyndon off the front? Who's there you go. What a ride by Wins to close that gap. What a fantastic ride. That's a great effort. And who's that going off the front? Lyndon. He's got a 30-meter gap now. Now he's one of the dirt riders, I believe. So very much, in fact, let's see if we can zoom right in and just check out his jersey. Yes, he's a dirt rider. I love this software. And at this, because I'm running the game I'm calling it a game, because I'm running RGT in full ultra resolution at 60 frames per second, you can get this level of detail. I mean, just look at that. I can see every logo on his riding shirt. That's beautiful. So he's pulled out a 60-meter gap. He's not going to keep it, I'll tell you that for nothing. But yeah, he's pulled out a 60-meter gap over these boys. So they're going to chase him down, I have no doubt. I mean, they'll leave him hanging out the front for a little while, I would have thought, but they're not going to let him get too much distance. Really impressed by Wins, though. Not only joining this group, but look at him pulling on the front. That's a very impressive ride. Okay, Let's go to the back of this group, Turcotte, and let's find out what's happening behind them. So these boys are 380 metres behind, and they're pegging it steady at that. You can see that it's not really changing much. So yeah, the place to maybe make the catch is on the next climb. Put in a big effort on the next climb and they can make the catch. Yeah, they're pegging it. They are slowly pulling it back. You can see the figures coming down. So they're slowly pulling it back, but to my mind, they'll do better when it starts to go uphill again, steeply. Then you got James riding in no man's land. So he put in that early dig to test people's legs, and last week, obviously, because the terrain was much different in the early part of the race, there were no serious hills like there is this week. So James was able to do multiple attacks like you saw him do earlier. My guess is that this terrain just doesn't suit that kind of approach, and he's probably burnt a match. Hard to tell. And Jones is going to join them, I think. He's pegging it nicely. In fact, he's bringing it down very slowly, but he will rejoin them. Yeah. I'm not so sure what's going to happen with these two because they're a kilometre behind, so that's a tough ask. Well, they're working nicely together. And they've got another two riders coming up, so if they join forces, yeah, they could pull back a gap. And Simmons is a good rider. Or so is Bellio, so yeah, but just quickly go through. Still going up the climb. Yeah, on the 25% section. Just look at that. I mean, from that view, you can actually see how steep it is, how ridiculous it is. I mean, that's just cool. That's just absolutely cool. You can see it ramp up as they go around that bend. Just look at that. Now, I wonder whether they actually ride this tomorrow in the Sportive. They did last week. They rode the race on the Saturday, in the Sportive on the Sunday. And if they do, and I'm riding the Sportive tomorrow, I am not looking forward to this. And I love climbing. I'm not looking forward to this. It looks like Andrade's called it today. And full credit to this fellow for just pegging it out at the back of the pack. Last man, Lantern Rouge, whatever you want to call him. Just spinning away. But back to the front, and we got Turcotte as got a small gap with Brielle of 10 metres, which they're not trying to break away at this point. Oh, there you go. There's the group behind. So they're not trying to make a breakaway. They're just keeping the pace high. And if they can keep the pace high, they can stave off riders behind rejoining, because you can already see that once again, I mean, they're opening up a nice gap now, but that's not going to stick. They're not going to. So you can see Wins has been dropped again, so he's probably burned to match pulling them back that first time, and he's paying for it this time. May well come back. Who knows what he's got left in the tank? But that's a tough ask. And you've got Pollock just coming up the finish of the climb. And the chasing group. It's difficult to call this one. Mr. Gill saying my legs weren't happy about that 25%. I can understand that, sir. I wouldn't be happy either. And that's the halfway point. So you've just seen this team, the leaders, going under the halfway point, which is a major milestone. 1 hour and 10 minutes in, under the halfway point. So if they can finish in under 2.5 hours, I'll be well impressed. That's pretty good going. And they probably will. I see no reason why they won't finish the second half of the ride. Excuse me. Let's check up on the front of the ride, though. How much of it? Now you can see these two are really. I said they weren't trying to make a break, but they are, because this is a definite effort to get away. You don't pull out a 250-meter gap without thinking it's a serious break. So the question is now to watch, and in fact, as I'm speaking, you can see that the group behind are pulling it back pretty rapidly. So they've pegged it now. They've pegged it back. It's changing all the time. Are they going to keep this gap, do you think? Answers on a postcard. I don't think so. I think it's too early. I think the chasing pack will swallow them up and they'll all come back together again, even though there's 200 meters in it at the moment. I think they'll all come back together. This new Spring in Europe pack from RGT is pretty beautiful. I really like the terrain, the graphics. The tarmac on the road, the broken tarmac, is very much like real life. I've ridden all these roads in the real life. One of my proudest possessions is still the wallet that you get for riding the full Paris-Roubaix route, and I got gold standard in that. I think that was 2000 and something, 2005, 6, 7, 8 or 9, I can't remember, too long ago. But yeah, I've ridden the full Paris-Roubaix course. I've ridden the Tour of Flanders course. I used to lead rides across in this part of the world when I was doing a little bit of coaching. So I mean, the Paris-Roubaix full route that I did was a very, very strange ride, because I had no expectations. I knew I was riding well, but I had no expectations, so just tried to stay with small groups, and I kept jumping from group to group until a huge German joined me in one of the small groups, and he promptly got to the front of the group, and every time one of the other riders in the group, including me, tried to get on the front, he would come back past us, and he basically stayed on the front of me, not the group, because we kept leaving groups behind. He was such a strong rider, but he wouldn't let me do turns on the front, only very, very short turns, and every time I did, he'd sort of like come past me at a higher pace, and I'd really struggle to hold his wheel, but I managed to do so. And I remember riding the cobbles in the big ring, and something like a 15 at the back. So I was really hammering over the cobbles, keeping a fast pace, because that's the way to ride them. And we were riding in the gutter, and he just refused to give ground. He just refused to let me come past him when the terrain got a bit easier. And I followed his wheel for what must have been about 150, 160 kilometers. And that's the reason why I got the high finish that I did, because he's basically just pulled me along on the harder sections, on the cobbled sections of the ride. And we had a sit down and a sort of chat afterwards, and he said that he was riding the event and he wasn't sort of like giving it full gas. He was riding it more for fun than anything else. And so to him, riding on the front wasn't really, the reason why he didn't want anybody else doing the work on the front was because he wasn't working at his limit. Okay, there's my alarm again. So while my colleague Steve Brealey is breaking off the front, I'm going to leave him and go back to myself and turn the pedals over. Let's see. It takes about 3 seconds to register the power. It takes about 10 seconds to register the cadence. And there we go. Come on, cadence, change. There we go. Okay. So back to the front. And the gap is being pegged at about 230 meters. So I don't think this is going to stick. I don't think two riders are going to keep a 7-man group at bay. But we shall see. Let's check what's going on behind. So here they are. 6-man group behind, not 7. Wins has rejoined them again. I mean, that man, is he burning matches, or is he just very, very strong and occasionally just sitting back? I don't know. I mean, Decker looks really strong, but Wins, to do what he's doing, to keep getting dropped off and then come back, that's a pretty good ride. These boys are closing up the gap. If you look at the graphic at the top, you can see they bring it down one moment and it jumps out the next, but that's because of the change in terrain. But then they're not going to, and Wins is off the back again. He's going to close up, he's going to get back on, but he needs to get some recovery, not go off the front. That's not smart riding. I'm sorry, Mr. Wins, but that is not smart riding. Unless you are super strong and this is just not taxing you at all. I mean, any normal human yo-yoing like this would be suffering, but you don't appear to be, so maybe I got it wrong. I don't know. I can only call what I see, and what I see is somebody that looks to be struggling 1 minute and then next minute is shooting off the front. Whatever. Okay. And who's that at the back of your group? That's Decker. But he's not in trouble. I can't believe he's in trouble. He's too strong a rider. I think he's just taking it easy. You've got some good riders here as well. And how far behind? They're almost a kilometre behind. So that's a tough ask to ask them to close the gap. And maybe, just maybe, they won't. So you've got a group of 2 up the front, you've got a group of 6, and then this is the third group on the road, another group of 6. Yeah. Then you've got Fiumt and Ogilvy just seemingly content to do their own thing. And I think, to be honest, I think that's it for James. I think he's realised he's certainly not going to make top 10. He's not going to close that gap. So I think he's just riding, enjoy the race, ride to finish. And don't get me wrong, finishing on this profile is quite an achievement. working nicely together, as are these two. Chang has spent a long time riding on his own, and again he's nowhere near another rider, so yeah. And some riders are happy to do that. I mean, I ride a lot on my own, but that's because I can't hang with the groups a lot of the time. Or through inattention, like if I'm trying to commentate, which I was last Friday, trying to commentate and ride and stay focused is very difficult to do. So I got dropped from the second group the second time by just inattention, and ended up riding most of the back end of the sportive on my own. But I was happy to do so. I would have been nice to have had company, but I just wanted to get finished. I didn't think I would at one point because I was hurting so much, but yeah, it was nice to get finished, and that could well be the situation here with Chang. He's maybe realised he's not going to win any prizes, so he just wants to finish. Here's Vullia, and I just spit out a word there, which has just reminded me of something else which I should be covering. So we'll just look at these guys going up the climbs. Here we go. There's MTO, still suffering and struggling at the back. Gil, who doesn't like the 25%, but then again, who does? Brunner and Bermuda, sorry. Bringing up the back of that little group, and Galizzi, Cartieres, and he was Lantern Rouge. He's no longer Lantern Rouge. Mr. Out is no longer Lantern Rouge. Andrade is packed, hasn't he? Yeah, so back to the front, and these two have only got a 200-meter gap now, so it keeps switching and changing. But while we're watching these two on the road, I mentioned the word prizes. Now, what I have to do is I have to mention our main sponsor. So I'm just going to very quickly show you the graphic on screen, and that's torm.cc are sponsoring us. And I'll get back to the action now. There we go. And what torm.cc are doing, the CC stands for Cycle Clothing. So torm.cc are a very small company that make absolutely fabulous. And I'm not saying this because they're sponsoring us. I'm saying it because I've now got one in my possession. They make absolutely fabulous cycling jerseys made entirely of merino wool. Now, I used to do endurance riding, and for anybody that knows anything about endurance riding and things like the transcontinental race kind of events, where you're riding thousands of kilometers and carrying all your gear with you, you only really can take one jersey with you. So it has to be a jersey that won't smell after a couple of days and that can put up with the punishment. Now, the only jerseys that fit that bill, in my opinion, are merino wool, because merino doesn't tend to smell after a day of cycling, or smell very much, and they're very, very hard wearing and very comfortable to wear for like 10 days in a row without swapping them out. I mean, yes, you can wash them in a lake or a river, which I did on the TCR, but you basically put them back on and they dry on your body. Now, I had a Rafa merino wool jersey, which very sadly was in a beautiful burgundy colour, and very sadly got cut off me when I had my accident in 2018 where I broke my hip, and they cut all my cycling gear off my body. So I lost the only merino wool jersey, and it was a very expensive merino wool jersey I had. And it was the best jersey I'd ever worn by a long way. I mean, merino wool is just a fantastic material to make jerseys out of. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I got in touch with torm.cc and I told them that I was going to be doing highlights programs. They're the main sponsors of the whole series, and obviously I'm covering the series, mentioning them in the comments and everything else, and promoting them. So in return, could they send me a jersey? Now, I was prepared to pay for it, and I put in the email, I don't want it for free. Can you send me a jersey so that I can basically wear it for the highlights programs? And later on next week, when I start to do the highlights programs and I do the final roundup of this series, and what I'll be doing is putting together all these videos and making like a shorter video, because nobody really wants to sit through 3 hours of video every time to watch the races. So I'm going to be making highlights programs, and I'm going to be wearing the jersey both while commentating and while riding, doing a little bit of riding. And I'll show you the quality, because the torm.cc jersey, which I've been sent, beautiful burgundy colour again with yellow stripes, gold glow patch on it, fantastic zippered pockets at the back or on both sides, and a nice big pocket in the middle. As I say, I'll give you a look at it later on, and it's without a doubt, and I'm not just saying this because they've sent it me and because at the moment it appears I've got it for free. I offered to pay for it and no invoice was sent. But maybe if I do a poor job of the highlights, I'll get sent the invoice. But in truth, it's the best jersey I've ever had my hands on. It beats the Rafa hands down, just from fit and comfort. And the Rafa was, the Rafa gear is very expensive and very nice to wear. The torm.cc is at a different level. It's the best jersey, bar none, that I've ever worn. Beautiful fit, and it looks fantastic. So I'm going to be showing that off. And what I would ask you to do is, as we watch these two, just, you can see, bringing out the gap at the front. So these two are working really hard to extend that gap. I still don't think it's going to stick. They've got 400 meters at the moment. Okay, but getting back to torm.cc, at the end of this race, I'm going to bring up the website. I can bring that up in another window and show you the website. But you can go there now if you want. It's torm.cc, and have a look at their range of clothing. They've just got a new range in, and see what you think. And it would be nice if you could support them. Give them a like, give them a thumbs up, because for a small company, which is all they work out of a bike shop, small company making custom clothing as they do, to support an event like this is just absolutely tremendous, because RGT is still in its infancy in terms of promotion, in terms of getting sponsors. So for them to come along, James asked them, would they sponsor, and for them to come along and sponsor all these March Monument events is, in my opinion, fantastic. I'm going to be running a series of rides later on in the year, in the summer maybe, called the White Rose Classic. There's going to be 3 distances, 50, 80 plus and 100 plus miles, not kilometers. And these rides are going to be run for every kind of rider, not just your racers, but every kind of rider, sportive. And I'm going to be looking for sponsors. So, for small manufacturers to come on board and sponsor a race series, as they have done with James, they should be given a little bit of support, because that's the way that we're going to grow RGT. That's the way that we're going to grow e-cycling. Enough about that anyway, back to the racing. So they're being pegged at the moment, as you can see, at about 390 meters. They're really putting in sterling effort. I mean, Steve's putting in 5-watt turns on the front, as you can see, and Turcotte's no slouch. But these guys at the back are also, I mean, Decker's pulling them along 4.8 you saw when we joined him. So he's not hanging about either. Wins is just amazing. I'm really, really impressed with what that fellow is doing, because he's there or thereabouts after, being dropped off a couple of times, and I have no doubt it might happen again. And yet he's not afraid to put his nose at the front and get the work in. The group do look to be working very well together. As you can see, Kwiatkowski's gone to the front, Decker's taken his rest at the back. So they're working really well. This group are these are 1.5 kilometers behind, so I don't see them closing up anytime soon. But, with hard work, there's never say never. But it's this group when I wonder whether they're gonna peg back our two leaders, because they've pulled out. Let's go back to the front. They're on the downhill now, so obviously they're pulling out a larger gap, but it's going to be closed up once they've got off the downhill section and the chasers, they get to the transition stage at the bottom of the hill, and the chasers are still on the downhill. That's when you'll see the gap coming down again. So it's more about how much can they take before the chasing riders get to the steepest part of the downhill. I don't know. I can see this coming right back down on this next section, and the group coming back together on this next big climb. So we'll see what happens. That's just my take and my call on it. But very impressive for these two to try and make the break like this so early in the race. And it could stick. There's no saying it. It depends how strong they are on this next climb and how much the trailing group push. So we'll keep a close eye on that. How much are these group going to push to bring them back on this next climb? Because if they don't bring them back on this next climb, or on the rolling section before the next descent, I don't think they're going to catch them. I don't think they're going to pull them back. I mean, once the leading pack, whoever and however many there are, get onto that final flat section that you can see, nobody is going to pull them back. Nobody's going to close a gap on them once they get onto that flat section. So how many do you think we're going to see coming down that final descent and onto that flat section towards the end of this ride? Answers on a postcard. So this is third group on the road, or a small group of 6. And as I say, I really can't see them pulling back the riders in front now. I think they've just accepted they are where they are, and there'll be a race within a race here between these 6 riders. Because you can see from the graphic, they're just starting the steep section of the downhill now, and the next group on the road are like on the transition to the climb, and in fact I'm going to join them. So our 2 leaders are actually on the climb, but the group behind them, let's get to them, are on what I call the transition period, where they're just going from the downhill and onto the uphill slope now. And the gap when that happened was 360 meters. So this is your chance to watch and see whether this group are going to work. And look who's on the front. I mean, just look who's on the front. Are this group going to work and try and pull them back? And this is going to be the key now. you can watch the distances for yourself. 350 meters. Are they going to close it, or are they going to peg it at 350? Is it going to stay like that? And if they don't pull back those two in this short period here, then they're not going to pull them back. So we have our two, our first and second up the road. I expected Turcotte to be there. I didn't know whether Steve would be. I mean, I know he's a great rider. And I've seen Stephen in sprint, so I'm not gonna of the two of them, I mean, Turcotte just won at a canter last week. He didn't need to sprint. So I've not seen what he's capable of in terms of the really high numbers, but I have seen Steve. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting battle. Okay, so the gap has now come down, so they are pegging it back, but pretty slowly. It's come down to 300 meters, so they've knocked off a little bit of the lead, and it's coming down to under 300 meters now. Can they do it? Can they actually? I don't know. They're running out of road. They're running out of road. You will catch on the climb, says Argyll. So shall we peg back a bit and see what's happening? So this is third group. Don't forget, this is third group, not second group on the road. These are you've got the two leaders up front, and you've got 6 riders, was it, chasing them, and then you've got these 6 riders. So this is third group on the road, and this is obviously fourth. And James and Fiend won't mind me saying they're completely out of it now. They're riding as best they can just to finish in a good position. So I'll get back to the tail end of the ride later on, but the real excitement is happening in this. Sorry, not this group. In this group, and this is really where. And again, the distance has gone out again. So because obviously Turcotte and Brearley, our two leaders, are nearing the top of the climb, so their speed is going to be increasing, whereas these folks are still on the harder part of the slope. They're just getting to what we call the crest now. So if we go to the front, look, these guys are already on the downhill section and pulling out a gap. They've opened it up to 500 meters. Whereas if you come back to these guys, they're still on the slope. Okay, I'm calling it now. In terms of, I did think there was a possibility they would pull it back. They haven't on that climb. And I really don't think they're going to pull back the two out front now. So I think it's going to be a 1-2 between Brearley and Turcotte. And if I had to pick a winner between those two, I'm going to go for my teammate, Mr. Brearley. So let's see if he can pull it off. It's a big ask because Turcotte is no slouch. So we'll see what happens. But I'm going for Brearley, purely and simply because he's a Team 3R teammate. Okay. But there's going to be a race within a race here, because obviously you're going to have these folks. Let's just get an overhead view. These 6 riders are also going to be racing for 3rd spot. And who's your money on out of this this group of riders? Wouldn't it be quite something if Wins took third, the 3rd podium spot? I don't think he will, but wouldn't it be quite something if he did? My pick out of this group of 6 is Decker, because I am genuinely surprised that he isn't up with the two off the front. If it's the same Decker that races on Swift, then I'm really surprised that he's got dropped. Okay, there's the alarm going off again. So that means that once more I have to jump on my bike, and then we'll get back and see how the leaders are doing. So just let me jump on the bike again. It's very, very strange, this, isn't it? You're commentating on a race, and you have to keep jumping on your bike to make sure you don't get kicked off. It's quite humorous, really. I don't mind. I don't mind it at all. I mean, it would be, here we go, we'll get back to the action. It would be virtually impossible to do justice to a race like this in terms of covering it. You can see the way that I'm switching the angles around, viewing the action, switching between the groups, the riders. It'd be virtually impossible to do that while actually taking part, while riding. I can do it with a sportive because I'm a bit more relaxed in a sportive. But even there, if you watch last Friday's highlights, you'll see I got dropped twice through the fact that I'm commentating, and I can't do both. I can't sort of like give my full attention to switching camera views and this lot, reaching over off the bike, trying to pedal at the same time. The group end up putting in a spurt while I'm swiveling the cameras around, and I end up getting dropped, and that's what happened twice. So I wouldn't even attempt to do that in a race because it just wouldn't be fair. I certainly, and also when I'm covering a race, I make sure you've heard the alarms going off. I make sure that it's uninterrupted coverage. If were I to step away now and go and get a cup of coffee, which I'm not going to do, but I could do, then what I would do is I would leave it on this view and you'd just follow the leaders, or you'd follow the second group on the road, wherever the best action's happening. But I wouldn't try to do this if I was racing. I just couldn't do it. Because being able to do this, being able to pan around, being able to look at the different views, I think it's just absolutely stunning and superb software. I am so impressed. I mean, I've live streamed the group rides, and we've had 500 riders on some of our group rides that I've led. I've led group rides with over 500 riders. And the software is just, the control software, it's just so poor compared to this, what you can do with this. This is just absolutely stunning. The only thing I'm hoping that they'll improve it with, and if you're listening, RGT, consider this a request. I'll also make the same request in the forum, but I'd really like to be able to use my mouse and click on the riders in the list so that I can select a specific rider. To have to do what I'm about to do now, which is to switch riders. So I've switched from Turcotte to Brearley, and now I've switched to number 3 on the road. I have to go through the riders one at a time to get to a specific rider. Like if I wanted to say, okay, we'll have a look at Decker's numbers. So now I'm on Decker, but I've had to go one at a time to get to him. And if he's in the middle of a big pack of, say, 30 riders, that can take a considerable time to find him and to get to him. Whereas being able to select a rider from the list just by clicking on his name would be a superb addition. And I really hope you can put that functionality in at a later time. But I'm not complaining, because this software is head and shoulders above anything else that I've seen in terms of commentating on racing. You know, and let's just go back to the front and imagine that these two are sprinting for an intermediate sprint. You know, I can turn. Let's just get a view that works for me. So here we go. So they're going for an intermediate sprint, and look at that. Look at how close I can get in and see whose wheel has gone over the line first. I mean, that's just one example of how good this software is. I showed you the other example earlier. Now, Team 3R, so I'm going to switch the view around, support the charity World Bicycle Relief. Well, there you go. Look at his shirt, World Bicycle Relief. You know, they're sponsored by Wahoo. If you become a member of Team 3R and a regular member and a racing for them, you can get a sponsor deal with Wahoo, get some money off their products. So, you know, there's a proper sponsorship deal going on there. But we've had World Bicycle Relief as our charity long before Team 3R and Race 3R and 3R were even thought of. It was called WBR, World Bicycle Relief, and before that it was called DZI. Wasn't exactly the same charity, but it was a charity in Nepal where we were supporting the cause out there. But WBR have been our main sponsors for 5 years now, I think. Not sponsors, our main charity for 5 years now. And again, the OTR, you can, let's get a good, whoops, so daisy. Let's get a good view of the OTR jersey. There we go. Probably better if I do it from the, there we go. Do it from the side and front. So the detail on the arms, the detail on the, I love the green. I think that works really well with the white and the grey. Well, the white and the black, should I say. But look at the arm, the sleeve, and the, I think it's a beautiful jersey. Nice colours that complement each other. So yeah, this software, to my mind, can be improved, but is pretty brilliant as it stands. And when you consider that, you know, you've got Swift that have literally got millions to throw into the pot, well, tens of millions, and you've got a small company like RGT who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible. I mean, racing, there's no comparison. And I'm going to have a conversation with Steve after this event, get his thoughts, and then I'm going to ask if he minds me posting his thoughts in the forum and see what he genuinely thinks to the racing on RGT compared to Swift, because he's been doing Swift since very much its inception. I've been riding with Swift since very, very close to its inception date. And so we've been with that platform an awful long time. We've seen all the changes. And it'll be interesting to get his thoughts on how he compares racing on Swift to racing on RGT. I just think RGT is so much more realistic. Anyway, the gap is still around the 600 meter mark. I'm saying still, I don't see the chasing group changing that. I don't see them catching these two. But anything can happen because they're on the climb. But I don't think it's long enough and hard enough to see a catch from the group behind, which I'm now going to switch to so that we can see what they're up to. So let's go back. And there you can see Linden pulling them off the front. You've got all the riders taking turns off the front, working well together. The only thing we didn't see this week that we saw lots of last week was team tactics, but the terrain doesn't really lend itself to team tactics. I mean, we had James doing what he did, doing a leg burster effort off the front, but this kind of terrain doesn't really lend itself to trying to break down riders, to one rider going off the front, then sending another, which is what happened on the flatter course last week. So I can understand that, there hasn't been much to call out in terms of team tactics this week. It's more, yes, by all means, ride together as a team, but it's more working out who are the strong riders in the team and letting them have their legs, letting them do their own thing. And that's exactly what's happened. Although they have, if you look, they have pegged the gap back to 367 meters now. So they are closing up, but it's going to go out again because Turcotte and Brearley are going to be getting to the easier section if they're not already there. Let's just check on them. Yeah, you see, they're already on the easier section. So the gap, and sure enough, as I'm saying it, it's happening. The gap is going out again now because these are on the easier section and the chasing group are still on the steeper part of the climb. So the gap is once again going out and they're not going to get caught. I can state that categorically. So let's have a quick, while these are whizzing over the top, let's have a quick check back and see what's happening further back in the group, because this is not just about the leaders. I'm going to swivel the camera. Dyer's making a good effort here, but let's swivel the camera around so that we can see what's happening to the group dynamics. And you've got 6 riders here working well together. Is that 7 with Amber's coming up, or is he the 6th rider? Let's just zoom out a little bit. Whoops. Yeah, 6 riders. Then you've got the proverbial 2 just doing their thing in the middle. Ellis and Cox sensibly staying together. They've ridden a good few kilometres now together, which is pretty sensible given where they are on the road, their positioning. I mean, they're not going to take any prizes for 17th and 18th, but staying together makes perfect sense. And the same can be said for these 2 as well, because again, no other riders around them, no point in sitting up, no point in pushing on. Just, I say no point. I mean that nicely. I don't mean that as a derogatory comment. I mean, you have to decide what your comfort level is and where you're at. And for me, riding with another rider just makes the comfort level that much, more engaging. Whereas Chang has been more than happy. I mean, he's ridden the majority of this ride on his own, and he's obviously happy to do so. So full credit to the guy. And he's not hanging about. Look, his numbers were turning red there. So he's putting in the effort. He's just happy to ride on his own, which is pretty strange. Xavier. I mean, sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes you are just dropped and left on your own, as I was in the Sportive last weekend, and probably will be tomorrow. Then you've got Gill and MTO, and these two have more or less stayed within reach of each other for a good while now. And again, that just makes perfect sense. Bermuda's was riding with others, but is now adrift, so he's on his own. Golitzi has spent a good period on his own, riding on his own, as has Goiteres. And then obviously it swapped around again because Nistelrooy was not the last man on the road. There was a guy behind him, but he's dropped out. So he's now become Lantern Rouge once more. So, and let's get back and see what's happening back at the front. Oh, is Steve making a break for it? It's not going to work at this point, not on the downhill. Turcotte is definitely not going to let him go. But Steve's a bigger rider. He won't mind me saying that. Steve's a bigger rider, so he's going to go downhill, possibly a little bit faster. I mean, I don't know what ride size Turcotte is. I say bigger rider, and when I say that, don't get me wrong, I'm not calling him a fatty or a big rider. I use that term in comparison to myself, and I'm a skinny little weakling at 63 kilos. So that's what I mean by a big rider, a big, somebody that relative to myself, has got a bit more muscle, a bit more bulk. And he's certainly got a good sprint on him as Steve. So that's why I'm fancying him for the win. Now, I genuinely believe that these two, it will be a sprint because I don't see Turcotte doing what he did last week and riding away from Steve. It could do, but I don't think that's going to happen. Right, let's and you can see already what has happened that I mentioned. I said that as they went over the climb and the others were on the descent, that the gap would open up, and sure enough, the gap is now at a kilometre, just over. So, and look who's leading the charge. I mean, if there's a prize today for most combative rider, then S wins it. That's a good pun. Clearly, because he's been the most, in my opinion, has been the most combative rider today. And what we mean by combative is, he's the rider that sort of like stood out in terms of having to put in the most effort to be where he is. I mean, you thought he was gone at least twice, 3 times this ride, and here he is battling to try and close the gap, and he's doing so. I might add, they've closed the gap to 500 meters now. So this is a tremendous effort. They're not going to pull back the two in front, although they're doing a really good job of trying. So a superb effort. I'm saying they're not going to do. This is a stunning effort. I mean, let's go back to the front and just see what these two are up to. You can see the red numbers behind. Just look at the red numbers behind them, and wins in particular. It's just. But these two are also going red, so they've obviously realised. But you see, there's no more uphill now. That's it. There's a tiny little bump that you can't even call a hill. So they're done. They're on the downhill section now, and this is only about half a kilometre. So they're on this downhill section, and then that's it. That's it. It's all then pan flat to the finish. I'm saying pan flat. There's a small hill. It's not a significant gradient. So that's it. And you can see because they are on the downhill, because they're pulling out the gap once again. I mean, obviously the chasers are going to have the benefit of this fast downhill as well, so they're going to close up slightly. But then whatever the gap is when the leaders and the chasers get on the flat, I think that gap is going to more or less stay the same. It'll to and fro a little bit, but it's not going to close up. They're not going to pull these two back. I'm fairly confident of that, because these two are just looking very, very strong. Mr. Gill, I have no intention to ride the flat alone. Oh, nice one. Let's go and see what's happening with Mr. Gill. So we'll just work his way back. I'll come back to these two. So there's Lyons. He's now Windsor's fallen back. So maybe he's just exhausted himself again. But anyway, let's Shapers, and I mean these guys are really, really trying to come back. There's Decker. Now he was my pick for third place, and he's currently in sixth. So let's see what happens there. There's Linden, who was really working hard earlier, and wins. And they've been overtaken by the group that came up on them. So that's why I think they'll all come. I think that small group will come back together. But what's happening with Gill and because they were making the funny comments. There's Pollack. There's Van Bers and Pledger. Two teammates working well together. Need to find out what these are at. In fact, maybe I can find out from the jersey. We'll have a zoom in on the jersey shortly. There's James and his colleague, his teammate. There's Cox and Ellis. And where's Gill? Simmons and Bellio. So Gill must be... Now then, they said they weren't going to ride on their own, and where's Gill? There you go. Yeah, these two will hook up back together. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because MTO has already stated he's not going to ride alone. Okay, let's find out what's happening back at the front. These two are still together, and they've got now then. And where are the chasing pack? Are the chasing pack behind them on the flat as well? More or less. So, now what I was saying is that whatever the distance between them is, at this point, it's going to remain round about that. So, if you look, it's 760 metres. So, I don't believe now, we go back to these two, that they're going to significantly close that 760 metres. I hope I'm proved wrong. I really would like to be proved wrong, but I just don't see it happening. These two will keep a close eye on the screen. They'll know exactly what they have to do in terms of effort, and they'll peg it so that the distance isn't coming down, isn't going up. My guess is they'll ride smoothly and keep it around the 750 mark, which is exactly what they're doing at the moment. I mean, I don't know about Turcotte, but I know for a fact that Brearley has got a huge amount of racecraft behind him. And we're talking real life racecraft as well as obviously e-racing. He's a veteran and a good one at that. So This is going to be a good battle for the finish, and it's going to go down to the wire. These two are going to stay together, and it's going to end up being a sprint. The only thing that could possibly happen is maybe with a kilometre to go, one of them decides to try. But I can see this going right down to the wire, right down to the very last few hundred metres. The gap has changed to 700 metres now, so the chasing group are really putting in a hard effort, because this, you know, when it's on the flat like this, to close a gap is incredibly difficult when you've got riders, you know, like you can see from Turcotte, he's pushing out 5.6. There you go, just shot up on screen from Brearley. So they're pushing out 5+ watt kilos. So the chasing group have got to increase on that in order to close the gap. And you can see it's 600 now. So they're putting in a good effort. But is it going to... And there's the alarm going off. So once again, this may be for the leaders. This may be the last time I have to jump on the bike. So I'm just going to switch to myself once more. There I am. And there we go. And you can see I've only climbed 11 metres. So cool. Okay, back to the action. So 8.2 kilometres to go and a 650 metre gap. So what I said is you saw that it went down to 600 and now it's back to... It's going to stay, you know, around this mark. It's not going to change significantly. You know, even if we saw a 200 metre drop, if it dropped from 700, which it is now, down to 500, I'd still maintain that it's not going to get closed up, that they'd pull it back out again. They're just nicely riding tempo here. I mean, if you can call 5 watt kilos tempo, it's not for me, but for these guys, you know, they're just putting in a nice effort. I mean, obviously they're not riding 5 watt kilos. You can see from Steve Brearley, he's putting in 4 watt kilos. When I say 5, that's the top end. That's what I'm talking about. And the chasers, you can see putting in, you know, you got Kwiatkowski putting in 4.7, 4.8, so almost the same as the leaders, whereas it needs to be, in order to close the gap, it needs to be significantly more. And asking riders to put in significantly more at this point in the ride, you know, that's a huge ask. In order to close this gap, Kwiatkowski, Dekker, and, you know, the riders pushing it along at the front of, let's go to them, at the front of this group, they'd have to be pushing 6 watt kilos to try and to make a serious effort at closing this gap. And you know, and they're not going to be able to keep that going, even if they're switching over, you know, switching around at the front. After 80 kilometres of riding, they just haven't got that kind of effort in the legs. Yes, they can obviously bring up the high numbers for brief periods, and you'll see that happening when they get to a lump or a climb. But you can't push out high figure wattages for very long without it having a serious impact. And there's Dekker going off the front of this group. He's still my pick for third place, is Dekker. And in fact, this group has slimmed down. Look, it was 6 and now it's 4. So I mean, obviously Wins has been dropped behind them. So there's Linden and Wins. And they've dropped off 300 metres. Now, if Wins manages to claw that back and join the 4 riders in front of him, he will definitely earn the combativity award. There wouldn't be any doubt whatsoever. But I think his legs are probably shot at this point, because the amount of work he's put in is tremendous. Really, really very, very impressive ride. But this is where the action's happen, as well as that obviously up at the front. So I want to go back to the 2 at the front and see. They've got 5.6 kilometers to ride now, and it's anyone's. It's anyone's of these 2. You can't split them at the moment. They're matching each other. I mean, their efforts look almost alike. Oh, I know what we were going to do. Let's go. We've got 5.3 kilometers, so we've got a little bit of time. I'm going to try and switch round, and let's see whether we can actually find a logo. Have we got any logos on this jersey? What bike? I mean, you know what I was saying about the detail? Can you see the RGT logo there? The what bike on the back? The detail that you can get with this software is fantastic. I mean, I can even see the name on the top of the top tube up, Hypersonic, or Hypersun H1 actually. There you go. But yeah, so it's what bike. That's what the sponsor of. But what does the back-to-back R's mean? That's what I want to know. So please leave a comment for me. Okay, let's get back and see what's happening with these 2. Zoom out. Put them on screen properly. There we go. Whoops. One-minute terms at tempo. Yeah, you see, that's exactly what they're doing. They're riding tempo, which is, on the flat with 6, 7, 8 kilometers to go. That's what you need to be doing. Just spinning it over tempo, and then kick bells out of each other with a couple of kilometers to go. This is fascinating. I'm really, really excited to see what's going to happen here. I'm going to swap the view around for this view. There we go. So these 4 are riding nicely together as well. Not long now. And I did say I thought, they'd finish in under the 220 mark, and they're going to do so fairly easily. So they've ridden the second half of the ride faster than the first half, which, yeah, you'd expect that. But given the profile, I'm saying you'd expect that. Look at the profile. I mean, it's... Okay, so here we go. They're swapping out leads. 3.1 kilometers. Just time to have a quick check and see what's happening behind before we get back to the front and watch them coming in. You won't miss a turn at the front, I promise you, when it comes to closing up and getting near the line. Now, these 2 I don't think are going to... I would have loved them to have closed up on the riders in front, but I don't see that happening now. Maybe, but no, I don't see that happening. And these are way too far behind now to have any effect on what's happening in front of them. They're still going up the slope. Pollack, Ambers and Plager. These are just Shank's still riding out on his own and pushing out decent watts. Look, he's going red, so it's not that he's he's riding on his own, but he's still putting in good efforts. You have to feel for these fellas still on the climbs. So they're going to come in significantly later than your riders at the front. And it's nice to see that these two have joined together. They said they would, and there they go. So they're going to ride into the finish together, I have no doubt. And I'm going to stay with this. I'm not going this now. So what happened to forget his name now, but he's obviously dropped out. So we've had a rider drop out that was Tail End Charlie. My memory is absolutely terrible. I can't remember what his name was. Anyway, back to the front. I'm now going to stay with these two because we're getting close to the action now. And which is going to be the best view for watching them battle it out together? Is it going to be like a view like this? Do you think? Well, we can always change it. I'll stay with this for the time being. Which looks a pretty good view to me. In fact, no, I prefer it. There we go. That's better. Yeah, there we go. And that's the nice thing about, I keep mentioning it, but it's worth mentioning it time and time again. That's the really nice thing about this software. 1 kilometer to go. You can play around and you can get just the view you want. And I think this is going to be the best view for seeing them sprinting for the line, because I'm going to see the line coming up, but I'm going to see them one in front of the other. So Turcotte's having a bit of a dig. Yeah, this is a proper dig, 7.2 watt kilos. Steve's just going to get on his wheel. He's canny enough to know it's too soon. It's too soon to go yet. Look, he's just 2 watts, 3 watts. He's not. Yeah, he's too smart. Way too smart to go at this point. He knows. When he kicks, you'll see the big numbers coming out. When he kicks, he will go. He will go like a rocket. Okay, here we go. He's still doing 2, look. He's just, yeah, the classic sprinter. Just, and in fact, he's wanting Turcotte to come in front of him. Turcotte's, there goes Turcotte. So Steve will get on his wheel now and look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. Come on, Steve. Come on, you can do this. Come on. 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 Yes. Wow. Look at those numbers. 13.5 watt kilos. There he is. Fantastic. Really, really happy with that. So I picked the winner. I'm going to change views here because I want to see the. There we go. I thought it would have been closer, which is why I stuck with the view I did. I could have, I didn't get Steve going over the line properly. We saw him just after he'd crossed the line, but that's because I genuinely expected them to be side by side. But for this sprint now, this is maybe the view I should have used for Steve and Turcotte. You can see Lyons going, and Decker. Now I picked Decker as third. Is he going to get there? Yeah, he is. So I've got it perfectly. 1, 2, and 3. I picked them. There we go. Now, will these two sprint it out? I'm quite pleased with that. Picking the correct 1, 2, 3. That's pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with that. Yeah. So, anyway, who's been your most combative rider? Leave a comment below on the feed and let me know. But while I'm saying leave a comment, please hit the like button if you've enjoyed the stream. If you're one of the riders, definitely hit the like button because I think I've given you fair coverage. Consider subscribing. I need to grow this channel, and it would be nice if I get some support and we can grow it. So, is Wynn's going to go over the line in 7th place, or is he going to get pulled back? Let's have a look. No, he's going to hit the line. And Lyndon just behind him. And then we've got these 3 on the road. Not yet got to the kite. So please hit the like button. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. The only way I'm going to be able to do more of this is if I get support. And I know it doesn't happen overnight, but I do need the support to happen. And leave a comment on what you think of the racing, what you think of the coverage, and if you can spare the time to put who you think deserves the combativity award, that would help as well. This has been very, very enjoyable covering this. I have really enjoyed it. I mean, it's much shorter than it was last week, where we were at the 3-hour mark. But even so, you know, even if it had gone on for a little bit longer, I have really enjoyed this. And what I'm going to do is, there's Brooke Wavel putting in a good sprint to the line. I'm going to be riding the Sportive tomorrow. Frey's decided to go off the front. So I'm going to put in a ride tomorrow when I do the Sportive, and we're going to be covering the whole event. But today has just been fabulous. It's been a great race, a good turnout, a good race, and my teammate won. Wow. I'm going to make something of that on the forums, that's for sure. Yes. So you can see them coming behind Mr. Frey here, but are they going to catch him? Or is he going to go over the line first? Yeah, I think he's going to... he's going to get over the line first out of these 3. There he is. And that's the order they finished in. Pollack just going under the kite. Now, in order to hang about for the last man on the race, we've got a good old distance, but I am going to sit it out because I think anybody taking part in the race, no matter what your final positioning is, deserves the coverage, deserves to see themselves crossing the finish line. And that's very much what I'm going to do. In the Sportives, like last night, I left the Sportive early because, you know, it would have taken another half an hour for me to cover the tail end Charlies coming in. And when you total up the amount of time I'm spending covering these events on a weekend, you know, the Friday, the Saturday and the Sunday, it's significant. So cutting short the coverage at the end of the Sportive, I think you'll forgive me for, but I don't think that would be the correct thing to do with the racing. I think every racer needs to be able to watch himself coming over the line and finish the race. who's behind Pollock. Amber's is a fair way behind, so we'll zoom in on Mr. Pollock going over the line. There you go. So well-deserved ride there, sir. Well done. Yep, wrong one. Come on, get back to the action. There we go, Vambers. Next rider on the road, and he's coming nicely into the finish, and he's putting in a dig to match as well. Nice to see. So there he goes. I mean, how you can sprint at the end of like 86 kilometers of racing beggars belief to me, because I'm no sprinter. I've hardly got any energy left by the time I get to this point. So well done, Vanbers. Good finish there. And then we've got Pledger, his teammate, coming in, and he's going to cross the line now. There we go. Oh, there's my name. Look, did you see my name on the road? So these two have got a further 3 kilometers to go. I think James is hanging on here, to be honest. I think he's probably shot. He's put in a good deal of work early on in the ride. He'll correct me if I'm wrong, but my guess is he's absolutely shot now. But hats off to everybody taking part in this race and finishing. We've had a few drop out now towards the end of the race. You know, we had 30. Did we have a maximum of 38? So if we get 22 finishes, that's not bad. I'll happily accept that. So there we go. I just change the view slightly. Is that a single? That's a single speed he's riding. Let's just take a look at that bike. So hang on a minute, page down. Here we go. Let's take a look at the bike. So you can see the Wahoo computer on the cockpit. But that's a single speed, isn't it? There's no derailleur. Yeah, single speed. Nice bike, mate. I didn't even know there was single speeds you could choose. This software is amazing. I know I keep harping on about it, but it is. It's truly amazing. So looking at the graphics, we've got the tail end child. In fact, we've got 25 riders on the road, so even more. And it's going to be close on. It's going to be close on 3 hours for me to cover all the riders coming in. So because there's a good distance, and obviously the different watt kilos as well. There's a good distance to the guys at the back, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm not going to. What I am going to do is I'm going to get my chocolate out because I'm lacking in energy myself now after 2.5 hours. Here we're going under the kite. So get the chocolate out, have a drink. Gill, I'm dead. Yeah, I'll be with you shortly, Mr. Gill. I'll just cover these two coming in, and then we'll. I think we can, because we've got 4 kilometres before the next two. I think I can start to have a look and see what's happening on the road. So we'll get these two under the banner, and then we got the real tail end Charlies coming in. Are they going to sprint it out between them, or what do you think? Has James got anything left in his legs, or is he just hanging on? I mean, Fiemt, I hope I'm pronouncing your name, sir, right? But Fiemt is a very strong rider, and I'm not sure whether there's an issue today or whether he just didn't have the legs. He's a much stronger rider than today suggests. So maybe I'll have a chat with James and see if there was a reason for that. Or some days you just don't have it. There's the alarm going off. I'm going to watch these two going home, then we'll get on the bike. So here we go. So I don't think they're going to. No, oh, they are. Yeah, he's having a dig. James is having a bit of a sprint. So there and there. Okay. And these guys are 4 kilometres behind. You heard my alarm going off, so I need to jump back on the bike. And then we'll come back and we'll see what's happening with Gil and his mate MTO. I wish I knew what MTO meant or what his first name was. Okay, so home, there I am. And I just have to turn the pedals. So there's my power. That kicks in about 3 seconds it takes for my power to kick in. And there's my cadence kicking in. Okay, so I can, there we go. Right, so we'll get back to, here we go. Now this is last man on the road, and you can see that he's still got 13 kilometers to go. So yeah, I'm going to be here for at least another 20 minutes. Maybe not, but give or take. Bermuda's is really struggling on the climb here, but no doubt 12%. That's and it looks to be getting even steeper. Wow, I mean that's not nice at this point. 73 kilometers in, and you hit a hill like this. Yeah, and James has just admitted that it was a big gap. Didn't expect you to close it, James, I'll be honest. Good effort, though. Here's Mr. Gill now. Is he on his own? Yeah. So Gill has dropped behind MTO. And while we're on the subject of, me giving last names and like MTO, I have no idea what to call you. So I can only say what I can see. If you do want to drop a comment and just let me have your first name or even your last name or how you prefer to be called, I'd really appreciate it, because I'm going to be covering not just every race in this series, but I'm going to be doing a lot more. Oh, they're joining back together. So Gil's joining MTO now again. But I'm going to be doing a lot more on the RGT scene in terms of races and sportives. And if I knew your name, and my memory is absolutely terrible, but there's a good chance that if you send me a message or put something in the comments, give me your name, or even just in the chat here, just say, hi, this is Robert, this is Richard, or whatever, or this is James. If I know your name, then I much prefer to use your proper name rather than a moniker like MTO. So it's entirely up to you. If you prefer me to stay with what I'm doing, then fine. But like Gil, I'm not sure whether it's Robert or Richard or Rob so it really would be nice to know. I mean, I got a good friend that comes on the group rides with me, R Stone, and I learnt his name was Rob almost immediately on one of the first rides I did on RGT, and so I call him Rob ever since. It's just nice. It's nice if I know people's names. So drop your name in the comments, drop it in the chat if you want to, or in the Facebook groups. Say, yeah, nice coverage, Derek. I'm such and such. I mean, that's what Phil Johnson did from last week. He was P. Johnson. I was calling him Johnson the whole race because I had no idea what his first name was. And then he told me that his name was it Phil or, yeah, Phil Johnson. So it certainly helps me. So there you've got Vulia. He's got 8 kilometres left to do. Xavier, 6.9 kilometres to do. And Chang, I think, is my next finisher, is he? 4. No, we've got Bellio and Simmons with 3 to go. No, we haven't. We've got 2 more in front of them even. I'm losing track of who's finished and who's not. Okay, so we've got Ellis and Cox, and yes, I was right. They're the last riders. Sorry, not the last. They're the next riders to finish, so we'll stay with them. They're just coming up to the kite, as you can see. Let's zoom in and have a look at them approaching the kite. That's a welcome sign after you've completed like 86 kilometers to see this kite. Yay! 1 more kilometer to go. There you go, Leon. Yep. Thanks for the wave, Mr. Ellis and Mr. Cox. People are obviously watching the stream, which is great. I love it. So there we go. Let's change the view. Get a slightly side-on view this time. See if they approach the line together. I'll switch views if they decide to split up. But it's really nice watching riders stay together, on a ride like this when they're further down the field. I can't believe that Chang has ridden the whole ride on his own. I find that so demoralising personally, but maybe that's just me. I really would have tried to have found somebody else to ride with. Ellis is putting in so we'll just switch the view around. There he is. He's putting in the sprint for the line. And there he goes. Over the line, and Mr. Cox following him. And then a further 1.6 kilometres behind, we got Simmons and Bellio. So this is Stephen and did he say Tony? Stephen and Tony. So, and they're both OTR. Bellio is not wearing the OTR kit. Shame on you, sir. You should be. If you're part of a team, wear the kit. I'm sure he'll forgive me for telling him off, but yeah, you should really wear the kit. And it's same as when you come along on my rides. I lead rides on Tuesday and Tuesday and Thursdays in the evenings, Central European time. And really, if you're going to join the rides, I'd like you to wear the team kit because it helps identify you, and it also means that you're showing support for the rides. So I think if you're a member of a team, you really should be wearing that team's kit. Unless you've got World Championship jersey and you've earned the stripes. So what do you think? Are these two going to have a sprint, or are they just going to be content to finish together? Great to see. Really enjoying watching all the riders coming in, not just the winners, all the riders coming in. It's And if this is, I'll message James later on tonight and find out whether this is the sportive course for tomorrow. And if it is, I'm going to approach it with a mixture of trepidation and joy because I love climbing. I'm not so sure I love 25% climbing, but I love climbing. So it's going to suit me. It's going to be my kind of course, I think, apart from the 25%. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So I think these two are going to come in together. They don't look like they're going to 200 meters to go. They're going to sprint. So we'll watch these two come over the line, and then we've got another 1.5 kilometers to Chang behind them. So pretty good riding, folks. Well done. Very well done. And there we go, Mr. Chang. And maybe you deserve a prize, sir, for riding on your own, because this is it. Yeah, this is very impressive. Just to stick it out all on your own. Just 87 kilometers. Doesn't bear thinking about. And don't forget, this rider was first out the front of the pack when the ride started. So he shot off the front, and then basically as the groups formed up and the packs emerged, he's ridden on his own. So under the kite. And looking like a nice smooth finish. What I will also do, just going back to what I asked a few minutes ago, about if you could put your names, like, James is certainly helping me there because he's putting people's first names into the chat that's going on. And that's fantastic, because what I'm going to do when I do the highlights programs, but also what I do after the videos are finished, is I replay certain sections of them just to check and just to get certain information. And one of the things I'm going to do is get my notepad out and actually write down people's names now that I have them, so I will know that it's Tony and that it's Stephen Bellio and Tony Simmons and Stephen Bellio. And I will, so if I do learn your name, I'll have it on a notepad, and then the next event that I see you in, I can use your proper name. I'm not guessing. And I just think that's so much nicer. So here's Chang. Be nice to know your first name, sir. Going over the line, and there he goes. And then we have Mr. Xavier. Now, Xavier is just in front of Mr. Vullier. They're both from France, they're both Frenchmen, and they were riding together for a fair old period, but they've more or less only just come back together now towards the end of the ride. So these two have sort of like done a lot of solo riding as well. 2.7 kilometers to go, is it? For Xavier, and then 3.4 for Vullier. So yeah, there's 700 meters between them at the moment. So if you are listening to the feed, James, and you do know the names of these riders, just stick them in the chat for me while you're giving them praise and you're asking them to keep it going, etc. Just give me their first names, or their if the proper names are not showing on the screen, like MTO. I'd love to know A, his first name, or what MTO is a moniker for. But as I say, I will be. I can't edit these videos afterwards. Well, I can do basic editing, but because they're live streamed like they are, I'd have to download them and then re-upload them in order to do any editing. So what I try to do is the live streams, certainly the long ones, like this is going to be a 3-hour live stream. I try to keep it so that there's no editing required on the stream, because then it can stay up on YouTube and there's no disruption to people wanting to jump on and have a look. And it doesn't take long for YouTube to actually, when you're live streaming, I live stream in full HD quality. And obviously, when YouTube process that, it's not in HD initially, it's in SD, which is 360, I think. Then they make it 720, and then it gets put in HD, which is 1080. If you were to download and re-upload, that process would take hours, even sometimes overnight. Whereas the HD version is available pretty much almost as soon as the stream is finished. People can view a HD version of the ride, so they can see what I'm seeing. You know, the really nice scenery on this lot. And just a word there, if you are viewing the content that I put up on YouTube and it's not in HD, return a little bit later, maybe an hour or so later or whatever, and you will find that it will be in HD, because all my streams are in maximum resolution that I can produce them in. So, I mean, I don't use 4K. 4K is just ridiculous, because how many people are going to be watching? You know, how many cyclists are going to be watching in 4K? So, but I do them all in HD, because my system is more than capable of doing that, and I just think the quality is worth it. RGT graphics are worth doing in ultra and HD recording. Okay, so we've got Xavier just gone over under the kite, coming home. And then I think we've got another half dozen riders on the road. No, 5, because obviously you can't count me. I'm not going to be riding 85.69 kilometers to the finish. So another 5 riders after this man comes in. And I'll switch back and we'll see what's happening with the riders behind as soon as Xavier and Vullia cross the line. They're pretty close together. There's only 660 meters between them. So these two will come in, and then I'll get back and have a look at what's happening behind. Nice and smooth finish here. He hasn't changed his pace. He hasn't upped his pace. He's just kept a nice steady effort going. Nice to see. I imagine just happy to finish, because I certainly would be. There we go. And Vullia is much doing the same. He's just 500 meters left. I like the jersey. We'll just have a quick look at his jersey. Yeah, pretty nice. What's the Robson, Forensic and Tide? One wash miracle. Oh, Tide. Yeah, Tide is the washing powder. I remember it from years ago in England. Wow, didn't realise it was still available. We used to have Tide when I was a youngster. So here he is, going under the finish line. And then we got the two comedians behind. So we got MTO coming up to the banner and his colleague, Mr. Gill. So yes, well done, Mr. Chang. See you guys on the next ride. You're some rider, sir. Riding that on your own. And Gill telling MTO that he's happy to give him the win. Unless he wants to sprint for fun. Oh, so they're going to have a sprint, these two. What comedians. Okay. You know, I love the camaraderie and the fact that they can smile and laugh about this because the legs must be hurting. I mean, don't forget MTO rode yesterday. So you know, he's already done 100-kilometer ride yesterday, and he's riding today, and he's still able to to have a laugh and a joke with Gil. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. That's one of the reasons why I love cycling because it's a very um, close sport. I think riders do tend to get attached, and not all, but certainly that's why I do it for the comradeship. Certainly, um, it means a lot to me. So who's going to take the sprint? What do you think? So 190 kilometers this fellow in the last 2 days, and there he goes away with a sprint. Well done, well done. Okay, so 2.6 kilometers to go now. So we're nearly there. We're nearly there. We've got about another 4 kilometers to cover of race coverage because we've got Galizzi as last man on the road. So we've got Bermudez here, and then Galizzi is last man. Well, I'm last man, but obviously I'm not riding. So you got Galizzi, and then you've got Bermudez coming in with 2.4 kilometers to go. So yeah. So if you're still watching, folks, please hit the like button and subscribe. We need to grow the channel. I plan over the summer on covering many more events on RGT. There's going to be quite a few significant changes happening. I mean, one of which you will see this coming week because I'm changing from a webcam to a DSLR camera for my feed. So the quality should be hugely improved. But I'm also I'm possibly going to be switching around the software as well, adding a few bits and pieces, seeing if I can bring a couple of sponsors on board. So yeah, there should be a few changes, which is going to benefit you, the riders, and you, the viewers. Because my aim at the end of the day is to promote RGT. That was the whole point of me joining from Team 3R. And that's still my primary aim to grow the RGT brand with my team, Team 3R, and World Bicycle Relief, which is the charity that we support. And incidentally, I didn't know at the time, but RGT's main charity is World Bicycle Relief, WBR. So when I organise an event later in the year, if I tie in a charity, and it's a big if because at the moment I'm basically left promoting the event on my own. I haven't got any helpers, so I may well drop the charity side of it. But if I do go with the charity side of it, if I can get some help, then it will be World Bicycle Relief. But more about that later in a few of my later streams, because what I'm going to be doing in the highlights is you're actually going to be able to watch me on screen as I describe the action and what's going on. So it's no wonder Flandrians are hardcore. Yeah, tell me about it. So we've got Bermuda's just finishing off here. And then Galizzi is a further 2 kilometres behind. So we're going to be finished just before 3 o'clock, I think, which will round it up nicely. And there's the last alarm going off. So I am, for the last time, I'm going to watch this rider in. So we're going to watch Bermuda's cross the line. Then I'm going to have to jump on my bike, because the last thing I would want to do is for the last rider on the road not to be captured because I've been kicked out. So we'll watch Bermuda's come over the line, which he's just about to do, and then we'll switch to me. I'll turn the pedals to make sure I'm not kicked out. So here we go with Bermuda's. There we go. And let's find me home. There we am. So I need just to, for the last time, there's my power. Seemed to kick in quicker that time. And there's my cadence showing. So that's the last time, because we should only have about 4 or 5 minutes left. So let's get back to the action. There we go. So I'm going to change the view. Oh, look at the rain coming down. Change the view slightly. There we go, side on view, nice view. And well done everybody, but in particular the tail end Charlies like Galizzi here, for actually sticking with it and finishing. It's what we want to see. And it's my tea time. I didn't get to eat my chocolate because I'm just got so absorbed in the coverage. So I'm looking forward to my tea. And as we watch Galizzi approaching the red kite, it's time to say goodbye. It's time to thank you all once again for your support. If you're still watching this feed, as I say, please hit the like button and subscribe. And I'll see you tomorrow in the Sportive, which is going to be a long affair, probably about 3.5 hours. But join me then. And then, of course, we have to wait till next week for the next race. But in the meantime, you'll have a couple of group rides in the middle of the week. And don't forget, I also live stream the CTT 10 on Monday nights. So the 10-mile time trial. So I'm doing my bit for RGT and you riders. Now, please, you riders, do your bit by supporting my channel. And that's all I'm asking in return. Thank you very much for the entertainment. This has been wonderful covering this event. I have really enjoyed it. Some very good racing. I managed to pick the 1, 2, 3, and get them in the right order as well. So I'm pretty pleased. Shows I know what I'm talking about to a certain extent, some of the time. Certainly not all the time, and certainly not to the full extent. But hey ho, 300 meters to go and last man in. Well done, everybody. Take care, stay safe, and we'll catch up with you later. Thank you, Galizzi, for finishing off the stream, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Much more tomorrow, and we finish just before the 3 hour mark. Much more tomorrow, so catch you later, guys and girls.